The Truth of Christianity, a lecture given by Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, 1999, Sorbonne. As far as I know, there is no Christian text of antiquity as enlightening of the question as Augustine's discussion with the religious philosophy of the most erudite of Romans, Marcus Terentius Varro, 116 to 27 BC. Varro shared the Stoic image of God in the world. He defined God as anima motu ac ratione mundum gubernantem, as the soul that holds up the world through movement and reason. In other words, as the soul of the world that the Greeks call cosmos, hunc ipsum mundum esse deum. This soul of the world, however, is not worshipped. It is not the object of religio. In other words, truth and religion does not belong to the order of the race, of reality as such, but to that of the mores, morals. It was not the gods who created the state, but the state which instituted the gods, whose veneration is essential for the state order and for the proper behavior of its citizens. Religion is, in essence, a political phenomenon. Varro thus distinguishes three types of theology, which he took to mean ratio, quae de dies explicator, and which we might translate as comprehension and explanation of the divine. They are theologia mythica, theologia civilis, and theologia naturalis. Offering four definitions, he then explains the meaning to take from these theologies. The first definition refers to the three theologians associated with these three theologies. The theologians of mythical theology are the poets, because they have composed songs about the gods and are therefore singers of divinity. The theologians of the physical, natural theology are the philosophers, or the erudite, the thinkers who, going further than usual, wonder about reality, about truth. The theologians of civil theology are the peoples, who have chosen not to join with the philosophers, with the truth, but with the poets, with their poetic visions, with their imagery and their representations. The second definition regards the places associated with each theology. The theater corresponds to mythical theology, and it did have a religious and worshipful rank. According to public opinion, spectacles were instituted in Rome by order of the gods. The urbs corresponds to political theology, while the space of natural theology is the cosmos. The third definition outlines the content of the three theologies. The mythical theology is made of fables about the gods, written by the poets. The theology of state, worship. Natural theology is said to respond to the question about who the gods are. It is worthwhile paying more attention here. If, as in Heraclitus, they, the gods, are made of fire, or, as in Pythagoras, of numbers, or, as in Epicurus, of atoms, and other things easier on the ear within the school walls than outside in the public square, then it could not be clearer that this natural theology removes myth, or rather, it is rationality to an extent that looks critically at what is behind the mythical facade, dissolving it through scientific natural knowledge. Worship and knowledge prove to be separate one from the other. Worship remains necessary while it is a question of political utility. Knowledge has a destructive effect on religion and should therefore not be aired in the public square. Then there is a fourth definition. Of what kind of reality is the content of the various theologies made? Varro's answer is this. Natural theology's concern is the nature of the gods, which do not really exist, while the other two theologies address the divina instituta hominum, the divine institutions of men. The consequence is that the whole difference is reduced to the difference between physics as it was meant in ancient times and the worshipful religion of the other contender. Civil theology has no God at all in the final analysis, just religion. Natural theology has no religion, just a divinity. Of course, it cannot have any religion, because the word in religious terms cannot be addressed to its God, fire, number, atoms. Thus religio, a word essentially designating worship, and reality, the rational knowledge of reality, appear as two separate spheres, one beside the other. Religio does not draw its justification from the reality of the divine, but from its political function. It is an institution of which the state has need in order to exist. Undoubtedly, religion finds itself in a late phase, in which the ingenuousness of the religious attitude is shattered, and its dissolution grafted on. But religion's essential bond with the state order penetrates decisively and much more deeply. Worship is, ultimately, a positive order which, as such, cannot be commensurate with the problem of truth. While Varro in his time, when the function of religion was still sufficiently strong, could still justify it as such by defending a rather crude conception of reality and of the absence of truth in politically motivated worship, Neoplatonism would soon seek another way out of the crisis, which would then serve as the basis for the Emperor Julianus's efforts to re-establish the Roman religion of state. What the poets say is imagery not to be intended in the physical sense are nevertheless images that express the inexpressible for all men whose main road to mystical union is barred. Although they are not true as such, the images are justified as a means to something which must always remain inexpressible. The above anticipates something we will now go on to say. The Neoplatonic position, in its turn, is already a reaction to the Christian position on the question of the Christian foundation of worship and the place of the faith at its base in the typology of religions. Let's go back to Augustine. Where does he situate Christianity in the Varronian triad of religions? The amazing thing is that without the minimum hesitation, Augustine sets Christianity in the sphere of physical theology, in the sphere of philosophical rationality, in therefore perfect continuity with Christianity's first theologians, the apologists of the 2nd century, and with the position Paul gives Christianity in the first chapter of his letter to the Romans, which, for its part, is based on the Old Testament theology of wisdom and dates, going beyond it to the Psalms which scorn the gods. In this perspective, Christianity has its precursors and its preparation in philosophical rationality, not in religions. According to Augustine and biblical tradition, which for him is law, Christianity is based not at all on images and mythical presentiment whose justification is ultimately found in their political utility. Rather, it makes appeal to the divine which may be perceived in any rational analysis of reality. In other words, Augustine identifies biblical monotheism with philosophical visions of the foundation of the world that took various shapes in ancient philosophy. This is what is intended when Christianity, starting with the Pauline discourse of the Areopagus, presents itself with its claim of being the religio vera. It means that the Christian faith is not based on poetry and politics, these two great sources of religion, but on knowledge. It venerates the being at the foundation of everything that exists, the true God. In Christianity, rationality became religion and was no longer its adversary. For that to happen, for Christianity to see itself as the victory of myth removal, the victory of knowledge, and, with that, of truth, it had to consider itself as universal and be brought to all the peoples, not as a specific religion repressing others by virtue of a type of religious imperialism, but as the truth which renders the apparent superfluous. And it is that which, despite the wide-ranging tolerance of polytheisms, must have been intolerable, must have been seen as an enemy of religion, even as atheism. It was not founded on the relativity and on the convertibility of images. So, above all, it disturbed the political utility of religions, and it thus undermined the foundations of the state, in which it did not wish to be a religion among the others, but the victory of intelligence over that world of religions.